All right, so last week I did a video and been hammered on it because I'll admit I didn't do a great job elaborating on the details I should have. I kind of, focused too much on the venom part of this. I want to say this first. I am vaccinated, but I'm vaccinated because my fiance is an Australian citizen. And because of COVID, we were separated for over a year. The only way I was going to be able to see her is by getting vaccinated. You all know what kind of restrictions Australia had over there. And to me, she was more important than anything, and seeing her was more important than anything. And that's why I got it. That's the only reason I got the vaccine. I've had COVID too, by the way. Now, I am very skeptical on where COVID came from and how it started. I do believe it was created in a lab, and I'm not discounting that at all. What I do find hard to believe is the theory presented in the video that was sent to me by friends, multiple friends, to watch, and that is the Watch the Water documentary. And all I want to do is lay out basic questions that I haven't seen anyone ask him yet, and maybe they have, but I haven't seen it, that regardless of the science, these basic questions do need to be answered to make this a, feasible theory. The first one. He says that monoclonal antibodies and hydroxychloroquine and certain things like that are anti-venom. That's why they don't want you taking it, because it protects you. Snake venom, when you get bit by a snake and you go to the hospital, the first thing they ask you is what kind of snake did you get bit by? The reason they do that is because the anti-venom they use is usually somewhat specific to the breed of snake that you got bit by. Now, I know that Ardis says it's not real venom, it's a synthetic venom that was created in a lab. So, if they already have to have different antivenoms to cure different snake bites, then how would the antivenoms that we already use, let's say in the form of a monoclonal antibody, be able to combat a synthetic form of the venom? And remember, the monoclonal antibodies, as far as we know, is just a general treatment. It's not like they're going to use this one for rattlesnakes, this one for cobras, right? It's just a general monoclonal antibody treatment and then hydroxychloroquine. So without even having a specific version of the antivenom, how can it just all of a sudden be used to treat a brand new synthetic venom that only a minority of people in a lab knew existed? On top of that, how close is the synthetic venom to the actual venom? If it's extremely close still, then it would work just like real venom, right? Which they said it does. Venom, the definition of venom is that you have to have it injected into you. The reason why you can actually drink it and swallow it is because all venom is a protein. You can digest it. Your stomach acid will destroy it. Unless you have open wounds in your mouth or your throat or anywhere on the way down, it really won't harm you. Bryan Ardis laid out that he believes we are getting COVID, contracting COVID, from our water. That's why the documentary is called Watch the Water. Which means we would have to get it from drinking the water. You could get it from, taking a bath or whatever, but you would have to have open wounds. And he does say that this venom, when they injected it into rats, was having the exact same effects as real venom. And they would inject it into their lungs and it would destroy the tissue around their lungs. Then why isn't it destroying the tissue around an injection site when you're getting the vaccine or the Remdesivir that he brings up? Or if you were in the shower in the water and you had open wounds, why isn't it destroying all the tissue around there and acting like a regular snake bite? Because it's very similar. You don't see that happening. Here's the other thing. A lot of what he's talking about that is deadly to people is the Remdesivir. And he says that, okay, you get COVID, then they either treat you with Remdesivir, and they do 2 5-day treatments, and that's what's leading to the death of people. And they say that they're finding more of this synthetic protein, or not synthetic protein, synthetic venom inside of people after they've been treated with Remdesivir than the people who actually get bit by a snake. Not only did Bryan Ardis say that, but so did the guy from the University of Arizona about the rattlesnake venom. If that's true, again, going back to the rat theory, when they inject the rats in their lungs, it works like regular venom does. So they would still react like a regular snake bite, since the venom is very similar. But why isn't everyone dying, or at least a lot more people dying, when they take Remdesivir? I don't know what the death rate is, but it's less than 50%. By the way, Trump took Remdesivir when he had COVID. He also had it with a combination of monoclonal antibodies and hydroxychloroquine. Why would they give him Remdesivir, which has the venom, only to give him something that is combating the venom as well? If it's offsetting, then there's no purpose in giving him any treatment in the first place, right? Unless there's something inside of the monoclonal antibodies, the Remdesivir, and the hydroxychloroquine that actually helps make you better again. Again, these are just things I'm thinking about and questioning, okay? Furthermore, when he talked about the D-dimers, and he's telling you, who I think it's Stu Peters was the guy that was interviewing him, and he pulls up a slide on the screen, and you won't notice this unless you pause it and actually read the whole slide. He's talking about how these people have elevated D-dimers that are in the hospital with COVID. And he gives them a paper, he goes, read that 5th bullet point on what doctors are told to look for elevated D-dimers. And that 5th bullet point was snake venom. And he made it like that was the end-all be-all. But there's a paragraph, if you stop it and read below it, it says, people will also have elevated D-dimer levels for heart failure, liver disease, pregnancy, post-treatment, post-surgical treatment, trauma, things like that. All of the things that we were told were actually underlying conditions that make you have a severe COVID case before this theory ever came out. This wasn't all that stuff along with snake venom. These were individual things will cause your D-dimer levels to increase. But he completely ignored those and only pointed out the one that fit his narrative. And if you go back and watch the documentary, it's a black slide with the white writing on it. Towards the end, pause it and read it. So the D-dimer thing is completely blown out of the water. Now, when it comes to the water, he says, or he makes a statement that once someone poops out COVID, they're done with their symptoms. That's not true. I've had COVID. I had symptoms for 10 days, and I pooped all of those days, which means I was pooping COVID out while still having symptoms. If it's venom or synthetic venom, and even if it's getting into you and it is making you sick, then wouldn't your body and your stomach still break everything down? And so therefore, when it comes out the other end, it's not in the same form that's able to be transferred on. He makes it a hard point several times in the documentary that COVID is not a virus infection, it's a venom infection. He says it is not an airborne virus and that it's being passed through our water. The other thing I have a hard time believing with that is not just all the purification stuff that water treatment plants have. Do you know how much stuff is being pooped into the water and the waste and the sewage that before it goes through water treatment plants? I mean, you have so many other regular viruses and diseases and everything that would also, you would imagine, get through there if the venom's also getting through there. Going back to just the basic knowledge of venom, it really wouldn't hurt you because it would be so diluted when you drank it in the first place. And then it also doesn't tell me how people on well water are getting sick, because they do. Because well water is coming from aquifers in the ground. It's not coming from the city water plants. Now, these are just things that you got to think about. And if he's answered the questions, let me know. But as far as I know, he hasn't. The big thing, though, that really got me and really aggravated me about the documentary is I watched it on Rumble, and when I go and I look at the description, because I like to go see the links, and if they posted anything, I can go read up on. There's a link to Bryan Ardis' website. Now, Bryan Ardis is a chiropractor. He's not a science, he's not like a doctor that studies all this stuff, which is fine, because I don't either. And he's a very intelligent-sounding guy. But he's a chiropractor. And the first thing that pops up on his website below him advertising the documentary, right below it, he's selling anti-venom supplements. And about 4 or 5 times, he criticizes big pharma companies, one of which received a contract from the Department of Defense to create anti-venom. And talks about these conflict of interest they have, but he never once discloses a conflict of interest of his own. By the way, these supplements, they're good supplements. It's just zinc and stuff like that, but he's advertising them as anti-venom treatments. And he's selling them. He's had this business since 2018, before COVID even started selling this stuff. He's also advertising water filtration systems from GrowMax on the website. Again, it just makes it look really bad when you are coming out with this theory around snake venom and the water, and you're the one selling or has been selling anti-venom supplements and water filtration systems since before COVID. What better way to increase your sales, right? I just wish he would have at least disclosed that conflict of interest. That doesn't necessarily discount the theory, but it doesn't look good either. There's a few more things I'm trying to think of that's another one. Okay, so he talks about how the government doesn't want us taking the monoclonal antibodies because it's anti-venom. But then he says that the Department of Defense gave Moderna a contract to create anti-venom. Well, why would they spend money on creating anti-venom if they don't want us taking it in the first place? Anti-venom is very costly. It's like $14,000 a vial. And the snake venom would also be costly and very hard to reproduce. And so I know that it's a synthetic venom they're talking about, but it's molecularly very, very, very similar. They even said that. They're even finding the proteins from the snake venom, or whatever the terminology is, in the synthetic venom. And it's having a lot of the same effects that actual snake venom would have on the body. But one thing we don't see is when someone is getting the treatment for Remdesivir, they're not having all the tissue breakdown and swelling and stuff that you would get if you were to be bit by a snake. He discusses the increase in time that it takes for your blood to clot because of the venom. Well, there's a few other things that cause that your prothrombin time to increase, and that is aspirin, any blood thinner. By the way, if you were to have an underlying heart condition, let's say you've had a stent put in. A lot of these people did, right? A lot of these people with severe COVID infections did. They would be on blood thinners already. Therefore, their prothrombin time would already be elevated. Like that's not, just say, oh, they must be infected with venom because their prothrombin time's up. No, there's a lot of different things that are far more common than being bit by a snake that would increase prothrombin time. Snake venom, or even the synthetic form of it, would affect people of all ages. But we only see elderly people really bearing the brunt of COVID. Also, going back to the water, if we're drinking it and we are getting sick, I don't know of many people that can go more than 4 days without water, which means that anyone that was prone to getting COVID in the beginning should have gotten it within like a 2-week period. Why is it so spread out? Why did it take me 2 years to get COVID? People were also getting COVID and dying of COVID way before we were giving Remdesivir out for treatment. and way before the COVID vaccine even came out. So it can't just be the jab that's giving it to people either. In my head, I'm thinking it maybe for some small chance it is the water, or it has to be airborne because of how many people were infected. But if it's in the water, then we all drink water. Why weren't we all getting it within at least a 2-week period there? And there's several more things I'm trying to think off the top of my head here on just things to question with this. But, I think sometimes we all get caught up in the science, like the hard words and the specifics. And maybe they have created a form of synthetic venom that does all the stuff he's talking about. I just don't think logistically it's very feasible for them to do what they've done. And I don't think COVID is what he's saying it is. That's all I'm saying. All right? That's all I'm saying. It just needs to be questioned. There's a lot of things that need to be questioned with COVID, but with Bryan Ardis' theory as well. And I think a lot of people are really buying into this thing, and they're believing it for the wrong reasons. I think they're looking too much into it instead of actually stepping back and saying, well, these basic things may be able to disprove this theory. And, I'm just trying to keep thinking because there are several other contradictions. By the way, he refers to cobras as vipers, and they're not. And he refers to rattlesnakes as not being vipers, and they are. Now, rattlesnakes will have different types of venom, let alone a cobra and a rattlesnake or the crate having different types of venom. And that goes back to my anti-venom question with the monoclonal antibodies and the hydroxychloroquine, which, by the way, hydroxychloroquine has been used for a long time as an antiviral to prevent or help treat malaria. And that doesn't mean that it's not anti-venom, I guess, but it does mean that it has multiple uses. And just because they would use it for COVID doesn't mean they wouldn't use it for snake venom, right? If it's used as an antiviral for malaria, and it's used as a anti-venom for snake bites, that doesn't mean that COVID isn't a virus or a snake or a venom infection, right? It could be both. Who knows? But that's like saying, for you to completely discount COVID being a virus because they're using certain treatments that could be used to treat snake bites and venom is like saying that ivermectin can only be used as a dewormer. And we know that's not true because it can be used very effectively to help COVID. So I think people forget about the multiple uses of these medications. I think people forget about other causes of some of these symptoms in the body. Bryan Ardis says that no one has gotten pneumonia. Again, I'm only quoting literally exact things that he stated in the documentary. He said no one got pneumonia. It was just your respiratory system. It was being paralyzed. But pneumonia, if you've ever had it, I had. You can tell very easily on an x-ray that you have pneumonia, and you can also tell when you have it that it's pneumonia. You're coughing up phlegm and green and pus and stuff. It's an infection, and it hurts like hell. It's not very fun. It's not, but you can still try and breathe. It's just hard to breathe because there's so much stuff in your lungs. It's not because you're paralyzed. Now, he is right about the ventilators, right? 100% he's right. I do believe that, maybe they are wanting you to get on the ventilator and then they just sedate you until you die with all the drugs. That's true. I don't know what the statistics are, but I do know the chances of you dying once you go on a ventilator are extremely high because your body stops learning how to breathe on its own. Your body stops remembering how to breathe on its own. Sorry. So I just want to clarify a few things. I didn't do a great job explaining my position on it, and that's my fault. So I just want to go back and I want to clarify it and give some questions about this theory on why I don't believe it. There were other comments made, again, and I'll have to remember off the top of my head, but those were the big ones. Those were the big ones. So, if you like the video, hit like. If not, that's fine. You don't have to like the video. Say whatever you want. Criticize me. That's fine. This is just my opinion, the way I saw it. But I hope everyone has a good day. Thank you.